We were asking for Baltimore Ravens extensions, and the Ravens gave us one. We talk about Rashod Bateman signing his big deal and so much more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today. A little instant reaction episode, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms for you, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, and we go live after every single piece of Ravens big news, which we are doing here because Rashod Bateman, he signed a contract extension with the team. A couple hours ago, this came down to pipeline, and of course, I always say this, the Ravens just hate me. They make moves when I'm not available, and they did that again, so we're reacting to it here. I'm really excited about it. Happy for Rashod Bateman. Happy for the Ravens, and we'll dive into that all here today. So be sure, you can subscribe in video form, you can follow along in audio form. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. And over on FanDuel, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go over there on FanDuel and do that right now. Man, I'm pumped up. Let me tell you something. Rashod Bateman is the guy that it's not hard to root for. In fact, it's very easy to root for him, if we're being honest. I mean, obviously, with him and his path to this point, it's a 3-year deal for Rashod Bateman. Getting to the logistics of it here, $36.75 million. It's a big deal. So Bateman obviously gets rewarded for what he has been able to do, particularly last year, right? That was a big year for Rashod, and we talked about that, right? Rashod is someone that needed to have a big year last year, and he did that. He made sure, for a lot of people, it was interesting because all of the injury concerns of Bateman, and look, they were well-founded. He was someone that he wasn't able to give the Ravens the impact that they needed, right? He was someone that was really talented. We saw the potential with Rashod all those years prior to last year, but we couldn't know who he was at his, I'm not saying he's at the peak of his powers right now, but we couldn't see who he was when he was fully healthy for the most part, and not even with Lamar Jackson, right? It was always Lamar and Rashod were missing one another. It always felt like Rashod was healthy, but then Lamar wasn't. But then when Lamar was healthy, Rashod wasn't. The two of those finally got on the same page. Two of those guys got on the same page, and we saw how good Rashod actually was. Now, everybody knew the potential was there, right? No one was saying, oh, Rashod has no potential, he's terrible, this, that, and the other. It was just about, could he stay healthy, could he stay on the field, and could he and Lamar Jackson continue to establish a connection and a chemistry together? That is something that we didn't really know one way or the other, and we got the answer to that last year. So again, 3 years, $36.75 million extension for Rashod Bateman. Super happy for him. And honestly, I think this is a really good deal for both sides, right? To me, both sides benefit in this deal. I think that the Ravens, again, with the way that the wide receiver market is right now, I think that the Ravens benefit from getting Rashod Bateman's extension done now. They have to obviously now look to Zay Flowers, but I was expecting this deal not to happen right now. This is a little bit of a surprise to me on the Rashod Bateman side. And look, different players value different things in terms of security, and I think that Rashod Bateman gets a very nice payday, right? This is a very good deal for him. I'm not saying it's not, but I do think the Ravens benefit from this a lot as well, because if Rashod had gone out there next year and had, or I guess this upcoming year, and had a similar year to last year, even improved upon that, well, Rashod Bateman's probably asking for more money than he just got right now. Now, the risk to that for Rashod, obviously, was, he had the great year last year. If he gets injured again, or if he has a down year like a Brandon Stevens did last season, he loses himself money. So he decides to cash in now. The Ravens, I think this was a no-brainer for them. I mean, look at the way that wide receiver contracts are structured around the league right now, just pulling up some of the top ones. You have your Jamar Chases, Justin Jeffersons. I mean, no one was expecting Rashod to come even close to that in terms of average annual value. This comes out to obviously just over $13 million per season. But, you're looking at guys like Michael Pittman making $23.3 million per year, Calvin Ridley making 23 per year, Christian Kirk with his 18. I mean, Jerry Jeudy's making 17.5. Cooper Kupp just signed for 15. And then you look at the ones who are in his price range, Rashod Bateman's price range, Darnell Mooney, 13 million. Darius Slayton, 12 million. Jacoby Myers, 11 million. Josh Palmer, 10. To me, I'm putting Rashod Bateman in that category of like, he's better than all those guys. You can put him in a conversation, with a lot of other people, but even like a 32-year-old Stephon Diggs is making $21.1 million per year, right? To me, this deal gives Bateman that pay raise that he deserved. He deserved that. But the Ravens also, I think, get ahead of it here. And with Zay Flowers projected to get a massive deal if he is able to parlay what he was able to do this year and the year prior to that into a bigger deal, man, I think the Ravens, I had talked about how they might have to make a decision. I don't feel that way anymore. I think that this Rashod Bateman deal gives the Ravens the opportunity to keep both guys in Baltimore long-term, which is extremely exciting to me. Because at the end of the day, the Ravens, I think Bateman is at least a wide receiver 2 in this league, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that, but there's still so much potential for more with him. Bateman is only 25 years old, and he is now with the Ravens for an extremely, extremely long time, which I think I'm still shocked. I'm still absolutely shocked by it. So Baltimore stays with Rashod Bateman, and Rashod Bateman stays in Baltimore, right? If this goes on to his deal, Brian McFarland, Ravens salary cap guru, he has us covered here, saying it would be a 3-year extension on the 2 remaining years of his present deal. So he'll be under contract now. It is a 5-year, $47.5 million life of the contract for Rashod Bateman. $10.75 million from the old deal, plus the $36.75 from the new 3 years. So Rashod Bateman, man, he's going to be in Baltimore for a long time. And so if he can stay healthy, that's the most important part here still. If he can continue to show that he can stay healthy, improve on this, that's a really big deal here. Steve saying it here, love the extension for Bate. He's so consistent when he's healthy. Absolutely. Jacob saying, love the move. Bateman's so slept on. And Mark, if he stays healthy, this is a steal. All 3 of those things are true, right? I think it's a steal for both sides. And you also are able to get a player under contract now, get him under contract early, and make sure that he feels loved and he feels rewarded, while also, I think, getting value that I predict will outperform the life of this contract. But that doesn't necessarily matter for a guy like Bateman here in terms of like he's not getting rewarded for it. Baltimore just did. So looking back at his stats for last season, because we knew the potential was there. Again, this was not a potential conversation. Bateman had the best year of his career by far. Was not close. Put up 45 receptions for 756 yards and 9 touchdowns. Always felt like he was there in the clutch to make a big play. And to me, the big thing that I look at is he's someone that is a 3-level receiver, but Baltimore has really tried to use him as that deep ball threat over the course of his career. Now, his rookie year and his 3rd year, he wasn't really, the yards per reception were right around 11, but his 2022 season, when he did only play in 6 games, that was 19 yards per reception. But Bateman last year, that full sample size of work, that full 17-game season, 16.8 yards per reception, right? I love that Bateman is such a good route runner. That's obviously a big part of his game. He's very shifty and electric in that aspect, but he can just run down the field and make a contested catch. And we saw that his route running, especially on those deep balls, you might just think something, a regular go route, just boom right down the field there. But what he does is he's so timed in his moves and he's so precise with them that he'll just make a little bit of like a shift, and a corner or a safety will follow that, and Bateman will just break right back to the outside. And that's something that, with these speed receivers, it can be, it can be hard if you don't have that body control to make a safety completely go to the other side of the field. I mean, there are multiple examples of this where for a guy like Rashod Bateman, using that sudden movement has freed him up so many times. And, Bateman will have those long receptions, right? 40 yards, 50 yards, 60 yards, and it will put Baltimore in field goal range, red zone territory. He'll score touchdowns on those as well. It just makes a lot of sense for me that this deal got done. You kind of look at some of the analytics behind Rashod Bateman. Jameson Hensley did a really good job of putting out some context stats for people to look at, because I think it's important to look at that context, where Rashod Bateman here ranked second in the NFL last season in highest receptions for touchdowns, 21.6%. That's per ESPN research. And he scored 11 touchdowns on 51 catches, including in the playoffs. Obviously, we didn't even talk about the playoffs for him. So he had 4 touchdowns in 3 seasons, right? It was looking bleak in terms of it's put up or shut up time for Rashod there in 2024. He did much more than that. And, I'm really excited for him because I know how much this means to him. We hear about it when he speaks to the media and he shows it on the field. This is a guy that cares. This is a guy that wants to win, and he wants to prove everybody, all his doubters, wrong, right? He's someone that makes a lot of people kind of eat their words here with this extension, right? A lot of people eat their words here because there was all the doubt in Rashod Bateman. And I had come on this show and I had said, hey, Rashod's going to be a really good player for them. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy? If he can't stay healthy, well, then the writing's on the wall, right? You can't be a consistent player in any sport if you're not able to stay on the field. But for Rashod Bateman, Baltimore rewards him 3 years, $36.75 million. And coming up in the second part of the show, I'm going to be diving a little bit more into what this deal means for both Bateman and the Ravens long term. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We have plenty coming your way on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. And the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. And we are in the NBA Finals right now. It is the Pacers. It is the Thunder. If you've been listening to me here, I've been on that Pacers train. I'm a Nuggets guy. They got eliminated. I'm on the Pacers train right now. So right now over on FanDuel, you look at the spread, the Thunder, they are 9.5-point home favorites. So if you want to rock with the Thunder, I get it. They're a great team, but I am going with the Pacers here, 9.5-point road underdogs, and building out a same game parlay, looking at a Tyrese Halliburton, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam, all those guys going over. I feel good about that, adding to that same game parlay excitement. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher instantly reacting to Rashod Bateman signing a massive deal with the Ravens. Now, not massive in terms of wide receiver contract standards, but a huge deal for Bateman. 3 years, $36.75 million. Awesome for him. Great deal for the Ravens. There are no losers here for me. Only winners. Bateman's a winner. The Ravens are a winner, and I love it. And I think what this means for the Ravens is they're going to have an opportunity to really get the most out of Rashod here. And Rashod, I think the reason that he was able to agree to this and he was able to, maybe give the Ravens a discount, right, is because of the fact that, the Ravens are believing him from the jump. They gave him an opportunity. And with the whole 5th-year option debacle, he fired his agent over that, where, we'd probably be talking about a much larger deal for Rashod Bateman had Rashod Bateman's agent not fumbled that whole situation. And that whole thing went awry for him. But I think that the Ravens made him feel loved and trusted him, right? A big thing for a lot of these guys is trust. And maybe like the grass isn't greener on the other side. We've seen a lot of that for a lot of different players where, even just particularly specifically Baltimore, where they will leave, they will go on to somewhere else. And, it doesn't work. The team isn't the same. They don't use the guy the right way. I think Bateman is very confident in his role. I think he'll take on more of a leadership role now with this long-term deal. Because, again, it wasn't like Baltimore had to get this done today. They could have waited a decently long time to make that decision. But now you have him. Again, this to me still, I called Rashod Bateman's deal the steal of the NFL. It was the best deal in the NFL. I still feel that way, even after this 3-year, $36.75 million extension. Like, I think it's that good of a deal for the Ravens, and Bateman gets rewarded. I can't get over how much I love it. And I am Randy, given the wide receiver group out here. It's true, Zay Flowers, Rashod Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins, Tylan Wallace, DeJounte Wester, Nelson Aguilar, not on the team anymore. But, you replace him, I think, with a guy like Tez Walker, and you really are cooking here with this offense. So I think, to me, there is so much to like about this deal. Now, you look at kind of how it affects the salary cap. I don't think we have the full breakdowns on this yet, Brandon. I think as we kind of get into the next couple of days, we'll see how it breaks down. Unless I've just missed something and I haven't seen how the deal is structured. But at the time of this recording, I don't believe that we have seen that. All we know, and Brian McFarland being the Ravens salary cap guy here, he says it's a 3-year extension on the 2 years remaining. So it's not like this will replace the current deal that he's on. He is in Baltimore for the next 5 seasons. And you look at Bateman as well. 77.8 of his 2024 receptions were a first down or a touchdown. 35 of 45, the highest rate in the NFL among players with 40 catches. That coming from the 33rd team. And they say Bateman, A.J. Brown, and Darnell Mooney were the only players with a 75% touchdown first down rate. So that's what I was kind of saying in the first part of the show, where, you're getting a guy that shows up and is a clutch player. Bateman, to me, is a clutch player, showed up in the biggest moments, made a lot of high impact plays. And yeah, it's a player that goes out there and performs. And he might not, look, in this offense, receivers aren't going to get 10 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown every game. We know that. Now, it's a little different in the Greg Roman era compared to what it is now in the Todd Monken era. I'm not saying it is the same. But, this Ravens team, they're going to run the ball, going to pound the football, and it leaves less opportunities for guys. But what really strikes me here is, sometimes it can be hard. And again, it's not the same way as it was under Greg Roman, right? But sometimes, at least in the past, we had seen how hard it was to bring in receivers to Baltimore to try to convince guys, this Ravens team. I mean, John Harbaugh had a whole spiel about it. He was like, hey, if you want to come here, you want to be a part of a winning team, you want to win football games and be a part of a great culture. He was saying all that. And he said, but if you don't want to, we'll see you on Sundays. Like, he had a whole thing about it, how hard it was sometimes to bring wide receivers in. And he kind of called guys out and was like, hey, if you want to stay, you want to be here, come on in. Welcome you with open arms. If you don't, man, all right, we'll remember that. That's essentially what John Harbaugh was saying there. So we'll see. But now I think that having Bateman locked in on this deal, it proves that, one, the offense, because, look, I'm not sure Bateman stays at all if Greg Roman is here. I'm just going to be honest with you. But two, it shows the direction this offense is going in. Everybody's super pumped about this wide receiver room. It's the best wide receiver room Baltimore's had in the Lamar Jackson era, maybe in team history, right? And Bateman is a really, really big part of that. I think he and Zay Flowers complement each other really well. But you now have a really good wide receiver, too, who has, I think still the potential to be a wide receiver 1, right? Bateman, as I mentioned, still just 25 years old, which is crazy. Feels like the Ravens have had him for 10 years at this point. And maybe that's just because he was injured for a lot of the majority of his first handful of seasons. But to me, it's a really big deal that Bateman wants to stay in Baltimore. He's the first wide receiver in Ravens history to sign multiple extensions with the team. I saw that somewhere. And so that's a really big deal as well. Baltimore got a good one here. Well, they had a good one. They extended a good one. And see, Jonathan, smaller per year hit and guaranteed money spread out over time. That's how I do this. I mean, this is a $20 million guaranteed deal for Rashod Bateman as well. So it's a $36.75 total extension, $20 million of that being guaranteed. Not a small amount. That's a good size chunk of that for Rashod Bateman being guaranteed. Now, again, he was never going to get the Jamar Chase deal, the CeeDee Lamb deal, Justin Jefferson, right? But I feel really good about where he is in that money range compared to the other guys in that range. I'd take Rashod Bateman, I think, over every single player in that. Every single player. Maybe there's one or two. I know Bills fans might argue Khalil Shakir. I think Rashod Bateman's a better player than Khalil Shakir. And I love Khalil Shakir, first of all. But to get the player that Rashod Bateman is, it's not just about that. it is also about getting the player Rashod Bateman could become. If Rashod Bateman was 29 years old right now, 29, still in his prime, maybe we'll exit it by the time the 5 years are, well, if he's 29, the 5 years would be he's 34. But I'm saying, let's say just the 3-year extension. If you got Rashod on that 29, he's 32 by the end of the deal. He might be exiting his prime, might be slowing down a tad. There's still so much potential here, and the Ravens are banking on not just the player that he is right now, but the player that he can become. And Randy's saying, I'm just so proud of Bate right now. I mean, I am too. It's a feel-good moment for everybody involved. I feel super excited for Bateman because he's worked so hard to get to this point. He's had to face a lot of doubt and a lot of hate from a lot of people. And my message was consistent here on this show. I mean, if you want to go back and find old shows of me talking last offseason about Bateman, I said that I'm a Bateman believer, but the last year was the year. He had to stay healthy, and he absolutely did that. And he gets rewarded here with a massive deal that is going to lock him in long-term here in Baltimore. And the fact that he and Lamar continue to establish chemistry. He and Zay have a good thing going. It's a great thing for both sides, and I'm really excited about it. But that doesn't mean that Baltimore is done. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about maybe who is next for the Ravens in terms of an extension, because there are still a lot more guys to go. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still rocking out with you here on this Thursday. We had a great episode this morning, actually, talking about extensions. Eric DeCosta gave a big update on Lamar Jackson's potential extension. So be sure, if you haven't listened to this morning's episode, be sure you check that out. We're 5 days a week over here on Locked On Ravens. Every Monday through Friday, we have your weekday episodes. Plus, we go live like this after every single piece of Ravens big news, after every single Ravens game. And plus, we have some bonus episodes on the weekends when time does permit and when headlines permit. So be sure you hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form as well. Rashod Bateman gets that extension, but he is not the only one that Baltimore is trying to get under contract long term. I think a big one is Lamar Jackson. We talked about that this morning, where DeCosta gave the update on that, and we'll see if that unfolds before the season starts. I'd assume Baltimore obviously is looking into that. I mean, they are. DeCosta said so, but they're not as far along maybe as people think, which is not a bad thing. But, it's just where they are right now. DeCosta made it clear that there are a couple of other guys that they were working on as well, which obviously now that we know Rashod Bateman got signed, we know Bateman was one of them. But there are still a lot of other guys that have that extension potential. And we've talked about them a lot here. If you've been listening to me, we've talked about them a lot here on this show, right? From a guy like Isaiah Likely, Travis Jones, Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, Zay Flowers, Adafe Owe. There are a lot of people that are extension eligible that probably should be signed to extension. So you look at the guys that they have signed, Derrick Henry and Rashod Bateman. Really glad they checked those two boxes off. I would still love to see a couple more extensions before the season starts. Ideally 2, maybe 1 more. I'd be okay with 1 more, but you don't want to have these things, go too far down the pipeline, especially Lamar's. And we talked about how his cap hit next year is going to be $70+ million. That is unmanageable when it comes to, an extension, or just the way you use that cap hit to build a team out. Like, you can't build a team out having a guy with a 74.5 or whatever it is. I think that's the number, $1 million option. Well, it's not an option. It's just his cap hit, but still you look at him. That's the one I'd love to see get done. I don't know if it does, especially with DeCosta's recent comments. And I'm not saying it's not going to get done ever. I'd be floored if Lamar left Baltimore. It's not going to happen. But now you kind of look at it, and do they prioritize maybe getting Isaiah Likely done? Or is it Adafe Owe, someone they see is going to have that big breakout year like Matabika did a couple of years ago? Do they want to prioritize him maybe instead? So there are a lot of guys that have that. But I think that, in the salary cap age here of the NFL, the way that they do things, it's true. They can't keep everybody. They can't do it. It's the only way that happens if guys start taking mega team friendly deals. And I'm talking like this type of Rashod Bateman deal for every single player, for every single guy. Lamar is going to get a huge deal. We know that. There are ways to spread that money out over the cap, over the years. So I'm not saying that, okay, they can only afford 2 of these guys, the rest see you later. There's a way to get most of these guys back in Baltimore and keep them in Baltimore long-term, right? There's no doubt about that for me. But are they going to be able to keep Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely? I don't think so. Again, unless Mark takes a team-friendly deal or Isaiah takes a team-friendly deal, one of those two guys probably goes at the end of the year this year. Are they able to keep Adafio if he has a 15-sack season and he demands, that $100 million contract that Madubuike got? I'm not so sure. That's why, the Ravens will always try to approach guys early about extensions. It feels like they've done that plenty of times in their franchise history. And again, another one gets done here today. But to me, the next part of this chapter for the Ravens, because we know that, they brought back a lot of their team. It's a good problem to have, being able to get guys under contract, draft well to make sure that they are in the position to get big deals, because that means they're contributing. That means they're playing really well for you. And that's the biggest part here for me, where it's not just this like, oh man, they're going to lose so many guys and this. They're able to get contributions. And we saw that, right? A couple of years ago, they lost a lot of guys. And while I don't think that, that free agent class, it was just a lot of players, but the talent that they lost, I don't think was as big as it ended up looking, the way that it happened. But now, you look at the free agent class for Baltimore next season, it is guys like Likely, Jones, Linderbaum's now a free agent. You have a lot of guys you got to either make tough decisions on or just let them walk. And so ideally you bring as many guys as you can back, and that's what Baltimore's going to try to do here. But the ones that I would like to see, if it's not Lamar, because I'm just going to say Lamar's not a part of this conversation right now, just because I'm just going to throw him out for the exercise and say, let's put that aside. I think they should try to get Likely done now. I think that'd be huge. And I think they should try to get Owe done. I think they should. Even if it's a deal that at the time it gets signed, might look like a not that team friendly of a deal. I trust Owe to continue to improve, especially with the body transformation and how good he has looked so far in OTAs. Just the way that he has really tried to get a lot of these, it's a lot of these guys facing hate and trying to figure out like, okay, what can I do to continue to improve myself, right? Always a guy that needs to be a little more consistent. We have talked about that here on this show. But to me, there was a lot about Owe and what he can do in future years, right? This is not just investing in the player that these guys are. As I said, it's about investing in them and who they can become. So I'm really excited for that. And so for Owe, I think, to me, like, the reason why the Ravens didn't get Madubuike at the price point that they wanted before that breakout season was because, look, they approached him about it. There are reports. The Ravens approached Madubuike about an early contract extension, but Madubuike wanted to bet on himself. Sometimes it's not just, oh, hey, the Ravens approach a guy, that means an extension is going to be signed. It obviously takes two to tango here. And so in the case of Rashod Bateman, yes, they wanted to get the deal done, and Rashod wanted to get that deal done too. But it doesn't always mean that a deal is going to get done, because maybe Owe takes the Madubuike route and says, hey, I'm going to bet on myself here. And I'm going to say that I'm going to have a huge contract here and get paid, because we know that if Madubuike had signed that deal before his breakout season, he would have gotten nowhere close to the money that he got. And Madubuike earned that. He deserved it. And I think that Owe, with the way that he's moving this year, might have a big year. So, and I see Tyler saying, got to re-sign Adafe before Parsons gets paid. That's another big contract, right? That's a big thing, where we know in today's age, where you look at guys like Kyle Hamilton, who he's going to probably be the highest paid safety in the league, right? That's going to be a thing. Well, Kirby Joseph signed his deal before Hamilton, which means that deal, even if it's just a little bit more expensive, it gets a little more expensive. For Tyler Linderbaum, he's going to probably reset the center market. The Ravens declined his fifth-year option because it would have reset it too much if they had accepted it. But still, he's going to become the highest paid center. And then the guy after that, who is of that Linderbaum level, is going to want to break that deal. So you want to get these guys. It's not just about, oh, hey, let's find a deal that works. And wide receivers are a little, I don't want to say it's like a different thing, but it kind of is, because there are so many of them. There are a lot of good ones. And, unless you are on that Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb tier, it's essentially like there are tier lists. And that's at every position, right? But wide receiver-wise, you kind of look at it that way and say, since Bateman was never getting that deal, what's the tier he's going to fall in here? I thought that Bateman, look, if he has the year that I think he's going to have this year, he would have probably gotten a $20 million per year extension, something along those lines, $18 to $20 million. So Baltimore getting him at 13.75 is a steal for them. As I've said all show, I can't say it enough. because there's that steal potential. I love it for Baltimore. I love it for Bateman. I'm super pumped that Bateman was able to get rewarded with this deal. And a guy that just he in the face of adversity, he was resilient. He was resilient. And I think that he has changed his perception within the Ravens fan base. You know, a lot of people were kind of tired of Rashod, and you know, I wasn't on that train, right? I'd said that, but to me, I think that Bateman is someone that really he showed who he was, and I'm super pumped that he was able to get rewarded with this deal. And Jacob here saying hot take likely should be tight end one over Andrews. I know a lot of people agree with you, Jacob, and honestly, to me, I feel like it should be some level of a 50-50 split here, which is going to make both players mad. It's going to make both guys mad, where likely's looking for that first big contract, right? He's looking to establish himself as a major tight end one, like you said there, Jacob. For me, I just think that with Andrews, he is still a top 5 tight end in this league. He's still really, 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 really good. So that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you just take Andrews snaps away. I get the playoff thing. I get he hasn't been good in the playoffs. That is a fact, and we have to acknowledge that. But to me, a guy like Likely, the targets aren't going to be there to the point where, you know, he's going to, I think, get this massive break in the bank deal. And for Andrews, it's going to be, he's looking for one more contract, but likely going to even his snaps too. And that's going to be the same conversation where both guys, I think, are going to get lesser deals because it's not about canceling each other out. Look, it's the best thing for the Ravens to have these 2 tight ends, and Tyler, 2 tight end sets. Like, you're looking at that as well. But for both of those guys, they will cancel out some of each other's production, which, you know, this is a production-driven league at times. And especially when it comes to big contracts, it will probably cancel out some of their money. And it's probably not going to make either guy happy. You know, I'm sure, look, if I'm Isaiah Likely and, you know, you have that tight end one potential and the Ravens are, you know, kind of flirting with trading Mark and he ends up coming back, I think Mark and Isaiah, they have a great relationship. I'm not saying they don't, but in terms of like looking out for that contract, you know, things might get a little dicey there. So we'll see what ends up happening. But that's all I have to hear today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. This instant reactions are always great. I love interacting with the chat, everybody who tunes in live. And if you want to see these live, hit that notification bell on YouTube. But of course, we do have them after the fact in video form, put them up in audio form as well. So we'll have an episode tomorrow, 6 a.m., regularly scheduled programming there. And if you haven't checked out this morning's episode about Lamar Jackson's potential extension, be sure you do that as well. Appreciate everybody for tuning in here today. And again, we'll be back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens. So on the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form as well. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.